What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, we're talking about the Game Week 30 free hit. So there's only 4 fixtures on this week. Obviously, a lot of people were kind of helped out with Spurs versus West Ham going into this week, but there's still going to be a bunch of you that don't have many players and have planned to play it in Game Week 30. So we're going to go through the draft in a little bit. I want to just go through some kind of talking points first of all. I mean, ultimately, at this point, I think most people should have already decided that they're going to use the chip or they're not going to use it. If you're still on the fence, then these are probably the other times that you could use it. So Game Week 33 could have some blank game weeks in it, but probably not for any of the big teams, right? So I think, again, listening to what James from Planet FPL is saying, looking at Ben Crellin's spreadsheets and stuff like that, it could be the likes of Wolves and Leeds that possibly blank, not guaranteed. The big teams, although their fixture might get changed, they would still play. And then some teams might have a double game week. Now, it could be teams that we don't really have in our squad that we don't want to keep long term. Maybe Man United, for example. But again, none of this is confirmed. But because of that, Game Week 33 could be a good time to use it. Possibly in Game Week 36 as well. That's going to be a big double game week. The only thing with that is, and I am someone that's thinking of using my last free hit for Game Week 36, is if it is such a big double game week where so many teams are doubling, if I already have the ideal amount of players, or at least I can get a team that looks pretty good without using the free hit, then I might switch mine to use it in Game Week 33, but I wouldn't be switching it to using Game Week 30, but obviously that's because I've planned to not have to use it this week. Game Week 37 is going to be a bit of a smaller double game week. You could use it for that. And then Game Week 38 is kind of, why the hell not, right? You try and guess some rotation. Sometimes managers will give us an indication of who's going to start and stuff like that. But ideally, you don't want to use it in Game Week 38 for what it's worth. For people that are kind of on the fence, they've maybe got like 8 to 9 players. I think if you've got most of the key players, that's fine. A lot of people are going to go into this week with kind of, I don't know, I've got 11. Luca Dean's got injured, so that's 10. Some people are going to have 9. I think people are going to have 8 and still not use their free hit, just because they don't feel like there's enough enough of a boost of points because of the teams and players that are on offer. So if you've already got like Kane and Son or whatever, triple Spurs, a few Arsenal players as well, then you're already kind of halfway there to having a decent team. Some people would have planned to use it this week. They may still have 2 left. That's absolutely fine. I don't think it's a bad idea, but for a lot of you, you'll probably be okay. So if you've got like 8 to 9 players, key players, you're probably all right not to use it this week. So I'm going to talk through a few more of these in a sec when we go through the draft. But so just some key questions from looking at what a team this week might look like is, do you double or triple on a defence? Now, if you think about the fixtures, there's not too many teams you can do this with because probably Arsenal, Villa or Spurs, you might want an attacker or 2 from them. You're probably not going to want to also double or triple up on their defence, I would say, because of the fixtures. So the only 2 teams I can really see you wanting to do it is Wolves. But Leeds always feel, like, I'm not saying I wouldn't have any Wolves defenders. In fact, I think I've got 2 in the draft that I've come up with. But I always feel like Leeds can score. And so I feel like you've really got to try and go all in on Wolves if you want to. Otherwise, you kind of hedge your bets a little bit. And the other one is Leicester against Brentford. But to be honest, I just don't trust the Leicester defence at all. So I don't think there are too many teams you'd want to double or triple on. It's almost like just spread your risk a little bit. There's lots of other good defenders. You can just go that way instead. Which third Spurs players? Look, this is going to be like Game Week 27. Everybody is going to have Kane and Son. I don't think there's any point in going against that. So it's just, do you go for a third attacker in Kulusevski, or do you go for a defender like Doherty or Reguilon? Leicester are tricky because they play Europa Conference League on Thursday. So that is going to maybe mean there's a bit of rest going on at the weekend. So you've got to try and have a look at the Leicester lineup to see who might miss out at the weekend. Obviously, they're not just going to completely change everyone, but you might, like if Maddison gets benched in Europe or Barnes or someone like that, then there's a better chance of them starting at the weekend. Obviously, if they play 90 minutes, there's less of a chance. And I think Leicester forwards are now really tricky because Vardy's been out and Dak has been playing, but at the weekend, Iheanacho started. He didn't do great, neither did Leicester in general, to be honest. So we might have to try and, I don't know, gauge some kind of idea from the Leicester lineup on Thursday of who might start at the weekend. Sometimes you might get a leak or something like that, but the deadline's on Friday, so chances of having the Leicester lineup on Friday is pretty slim. So I think Leicester are quite tricky. I think a lot of people like them because they're playing Brentford, but they might be tricky to call. Like, is Dak or Iheanacho going to start? Right now, I couldn't tell you. I just wouldn't have a clue, honestly. I think you've either got some inside knowledge, you know more about Leicester, or you just take a punt for me. And the problem is, whichever one doesn't start could easily come on as well for a cameo. And then I think Villa versus Arsenal is a big call, because if you go for an Arsenal or Villa defender, then you kind of don't want to go for the attacker from the opposite team, or do you maybe just ignore the defence completely? I think you kind of go all in. Like, you don't want double Arsenal attack and then double Villa defence, right? That would just make very little sense. So I think you really have to, like, I think Arsenal are the favourites to win that game, but it is away, so that obviously gives a bit of an advantage to Villa. So that is a tough call. These are all things you need to think about when you're building your draft. Let's look at mine. Alright, so this is the first draft I put together, but I'm going to do a little bit of tinkering and explain why some players are in there and why others aren't. So this is all done on FPL.team. That's where the planners come. This is about as big as I can make it and try and fit all players on screen. I mean, the bench doesn't really matter. There's going to be a lot of money to spend this week. Kane and Son are really the only expensive players. Everyone else is pretty cheap. So straight away, this is already like, I'm feeling, am I just hedging my bets too much, right? I really like Rafinha. I didn't obviously do a stream yesterday to talk about him. I did think people overreacted a little bit after the Villa game, and he should have got more points against Norwich, but that was Norwich. It's going to be more difficult against Wolves, but I do think Patrick Bamford being back is so big for Leeds. He's such a massive upgrade from having to play someone like Dan James up front, right? It's unbelievable. And Wolves' defence, like, I see them as a defence that's usually pretty good, but obviously the numbers haven't looked great recently. So I think Leeds could give them a game. But again, if you're backing Sarr and Saiss, it's like, do you want Rafinha as well? You're hedging your bets. If Wolves lose the clean sheet, then okay, Rafinha probably gets some points. If they keep a clean sheet, okay, Rafinha's blanked, but you've got a double clean sheet. So I don't think it's bad doing this, but you could go for another midfielder. For example, you could go for another midfielder like Martinelli, for example, and just triple on Arsenal attack. But again, if you think that the Arsenal Villa game's hard to call, you could hedge your bets a bit. And that is why in defence, I've not gone for any Arsenal. I've got obviously Tierney on the bench, but I've not gone for any Arsenal and no Villa, because I feel like Saka and Lacazette and Arsenal in general are just playing really well right now. I don't really see Villa necessarily getting a clean sheet, even though they are quite tough to play against, and therefore I've not put a Villa defender in. The only question is, do I trust someone like Ricardo Pereira at Leicester to get a clean sheet against Brentford? I know a lot of people are kind of hot on Tony right now, and I don't think Tony is a bad option this week. I think there's actually a conversation to be had for people not free hitting to possibly bring him in this week. I'm going to talk about that later on this week. But I think he's got a lot of penalties recently. We have to kind of acknowledge that. I know Brentford have been playing a bit better, but a lot. I think it's like 3 penalties in the last 2 games. Right, that's probably not going to keep going. So that's why I've got the Leicester defender in there. But again, I don't really trust them massively. So if you wanted to change that, you could just put Tierney in instead and just fully back Arsenal. One of the other reasons I did this, put Pereira in, was instead of going for any Arsenal defenders and any Villa ones, is maybe just to upgrade Rafinha to someone like Coutinho, and just back both attacks. So have 2 Arsenal, 1 Villa attack. Because I could see that game being like a low scoring game, like a 1-1, like a 2-1 or something like that. I don't think there's going to, this could be famous last words, but I don't expect a huge amount of goals. I think both defences are fairly decent. So you could just go for a couple of attackers overall, like 3 in total from that game, and just leave it like that. Elsewhere, obviously, Kane and Son are pretty much locks. I don't see why you wouldn't go for both of those players. It just doesn't make sense. You could go for Kulusevski, but I just think the defence is like weak this week. Like a lot of, I've got Luka Dean in my team, for example, who's now injured. There's not really any defenders that I want to bring in that I would want to hold long term. Obviously, on a free hit, you're not worried about long term, but I still just don't think, like, if you look at the fixtures, like, you're not going to back West Ham against Spurs. Plus, West Ham are missing players now, right? Antonio got injured yesterday. Cresswell got injured. If they're not back, that makes West Ham quite weak. And obviously, they're already missing Bowen as well. I don't think you're going to go for a Brentford defender. You're definitely not going for a Leeds defender. You've already got Wolves covered. You've got 1 from Leicester as well. So unless you want an Arsenal or a Villa defender, which I just don't see a huge amount of upside, I think your third Spurs player probably goes to one of the wing backs. And I'm not going for Reguilon just because he assisted. I think we need to see what happens in the second Spurs game this week. Trying again, if one of them misses out, Reguilon or Doherty, you'd expect them to start against West Ham. But I just think Reguilon without Sessegnon has to be pretty nailed. I'm just not sure I know Doherty's played on the left before, but I'm not sure that's going to happen. So I actually quite like Reguilon. But if you wanted to go Doherty, that's not a problem either. So I don't think there's a huge amount of changes I would make to this. I think Jimenez is perfectly fine to put in because it's Leeds. Leeds' defence is not great. Again, they played really well against Norwich yesterday. Just like they played really well against Leicester. They had a tough time against Villa. Wolves is going to be more difficult again. Like it's not going to be an easy game. But I think their Leeds' defence is just not great in general, and I'm just not sure Jesse Marsch is going to make too much of a difference to that. So I quite like Jimenez. If you wanted to go for someone else, you could maybe punt on one of their midfielders, but it's pretty difficult to know not only who's going to start, but who's going to get minutes in the Wolves side, whereas you're pretty confident that Jimenez would start. But you don't have to play him, right? You could just bench him and maybe go for double Leicester midfield instead. Obviously, the other option is just to swap Jimenez out for an attacker. So, again, you could put Daka in. Obviously, you can't have 4 Leicester players, but I'm not going to change that around right now. But if you're confident in Daka or Iheanacho starting, I really like those as punts on this. And I think if you're looking at going for players that the crowd don't have, the likes of me who are not free hitting, Leicester players hardly anyone has, so they're definitely worth a look at. And they are probably the key ones, and Brentford. So again, if you weren't sure on Daka, and obviously you wanted to keep the other 3 Leicester players, then Tony is the way, something like that. But if I was free hitting this week, I think Sarr is the best goalkeeper. I wouldn't go Meslier. I probably wouldn't go for Martinez, or unless I wanted to fully back Villa. Like if I thought, right, Villa are going to win 2-0, then I would get Martinez. But I just don't feel that confident in that. Schmeichel's probably the other option, or maybe Lloris. But I think Reguilon or Doherty's better options than Lloris. So I think Sarr is probably the best goalkeeper. So he would probably be in there. I would definitely go triple Spurs. Son and Kane are locks, obviously. And I'd probably go for a defender over Kulusevski. I just think there's a few interesting punts you could go in midfield this week. But Kulusevski's not a bad option at all. Saka and Lacazette, that's already 6 players I would pretty much definitely have. And then you're just filling in the rest of the blanks. So I don't think something like this looks that bad. You'd be hoping, again, you've got Pereira against Tony. I don't think, at some point, you probably just have to decide to kind of hedge your bets in one of the games. Like you could go triple Wolves defence against Leeds and not have Rafinha or Bamford, but I just don't know about that. I just think Leeds are always one of those teams that can score, so I probably wouldn't put 3. Just really quickly on Bamford, I know some of you are probably thinking about that as a punt. I don't mind it, but he came off after 45 minutes yesterday. I think that was pre-planned. He's been out for so long, I just don't think you can rely on his minutes, so I don't think he's a good pick this week. But that's where I'd be thinking. Kane, Son, Lacazette, Saka and Sarr probably locks, probably a Spurs defender as well. And then you really just have to decide how you think the rest of the games are going to go. I would probably back Leicester against Brentford. I know Brentford have done really well. I know Tony's got a lot of penalties recently. He has got some goals as well, like from open play. But I think I would just back Leicester. I think a lot of people don't have them. If you can guess the team or the lineup from what happens on Thursday, I think it looks ideal. There you go. That is my Game Week 33 hit, or my thoughts around it. That's not a locked-in draft. I like to tinker on these videos to get you different thoughts from different players across. But yeah, I think Villa, Coutinho is the only one I would look at. I don't think I'll be looking at Ings or Watkins this week. If you enjoyed that, give it a like, hit that subscribe button if you're new. Apologies for no stream yesterday. I'm still not feeling like 100%. I am better, but it's like recording videos, like this one was actually okay. I don't know why, but in the morning doing videos, it seems to be okay. And then as it gets further down the day, it just gets worse, and I'm coughing a lot and I can't speak for a long time. So doing a stream yesterday just didn't feel worthwhile. I'd rather try and get better for the rest of the week, keep the videos pumping out, and maybe do a deadline stream on Friday as well. So hopefully I'll be better soon. It is getting better, but not fully there yet. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed those thoughts. Give it a like, hit subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow.